This is 7th grade lesson 3.2. It's actually part 3. Today, students will define slope and determine the slope of a line from a set of coordinates. This is actually in addition to our book, so we won't actually have out of the hardcover book working with coordinates. It's just an extension of lesson 3.2. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with slope from 2 points. So where they'll give us a set of coordinates. We're still going to use the same equation that we used yesterday, and that's that change in y over change in x. And the key thing to remember on this is you have to remember that as you're working with these, if you have negative numbers, that minus sign in the change of y does not get substituted in for a negative if you have a negative in that second y position. You have to include that minus sign also. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with 2 of our points. So here's a situation where we've got a set of coordinates. So sets of coordinates are always set up the same as the alphabet. They are set up as x, y. So this is our x and this is our y. So I've gone ahead and color coded these, but you have to realize that if you are working out of a book or a worksheet, if you were taking this on STAR Assessment or IO Assessment, they're not going to be color coded. So I start out that way just to begin with, just to get your eyes focused on what needs to go where, and then eventually we'll go away from having the colors in there. So our x's are that first number in each set, and our y's are our second number. So we're just going to plug in our information. So here I've got a negative 12, because it's a y. Remember, our y's go on the top. I have to remember my minus sign, and then a negative 3. Most common made mistake is this will get left out, that minus sign, because kids, adults, people working through this, they go through and they write it out fast and they forget that there's a minus in front of that 3, a negative in front of that 3, but they still need to include that minus sign because we have to show the change. Okay, so then when I do my x's, well, my x was, since I started with the 12, I have to start with the 6. So 6 minus, and then I've got my 15. Okay, so now I can go through and work this out. So the first step is just getting it into the equation and making sure that you're setting it up correctly. So when I go through and solve now, I'm going to remember 2 negatives, make this a plus sign. Okay, so negative 12 plus 3, different symbols find the difference, which would be 9. The larger number was negative, over 6 minus 15. So once again, one's positive, one's negative, or has a minus sign in front of it. So different symbols find the difference, which would be 15 minus 6 is 9, and it would have been a negative. In the end, those 2 negatives make it a positive 9 over 9, which is the same as 1. So our slope would be 1 over 1, or just a 1, and that would be a positive. Okay, so let's go ahead and try another set. Okay, so here's our next set. Okay, so our change in y's. So doesn't matter which one you start with. This time I'll start with the back one. Okay, just to prove to you it doesn't matter which one. So I'm going to write it out as 5 minus 2. Okay, since I started with that 5, that means that I have to start with my 7 on this one. So negative 7 minus 12. Okay, so now when I go through and I solve it, 5 minus 2 gives me a 3. Same symbol sum, which 7 and 12 is 19, apply the same symbol. I get 3 over negative 19, which in the end is the same as negative 3/19. Okay? Remember, if you get a negative in one of them, it applies to the entire slope, whether it's on the top number or the bottom number. All right, so let's try this one. So our change in y's. So I'm usually strategy is I look at my y's first and I take the bigger of the 2 numbers so that I can get a positive number if I'm working both positives. So I'm going to write it out with the 16 in the front. So 16 minus 8. Now, because I started with the 16, I have to start with this 9. I don't get to then pick. So I have to do 9 minus 20. And I know lots of times kids, adults, whatever, they want to do the bigger number minus the smaller number, so they get positives, but that affects whether your slope's positive or negative. So you have to go in the same order. So now if I do 16 minus 8, that's going to give me 8 over 9 minus 20, positive versus negative. Those are different. Find the difference, which is 11. The larger number was negative, so it's a negative 11. In the end, it's negative 8/11 for my slope. Okay, this one I didn't color code. So my X's and my Y's. Remember, it's just like the alphabet, X, Y, Z, X, Y, X, Y. Okay, so now if I go through and I look at my Y's, it doesn't matter which one I put first. I'll go left to right this time just because my 3 is positive. So I'm going to start with this one. So 3, I have to remember my minus sign. And now I'm going to write my negative 17. Okay, somebody else might have started with the 17, negative 17 minus, and then the 3. But whatever order you choose to put it in and your Y's, you have to go in the same order. So since I started with this Y, I have to start with this X. So 9 minus 19. If I had started with the 19, then it would have to be 19 minus 9. And you're going to see on both of these, I'll end up with the same answer. So when I go through and I do this, that makes it a plus sign. So 3 plus 17 is 20 over 9 minus 19. 19 is larger, so it's going to be a negative, and those are different, so subtract 10. When I reduce that down, 10 would go into each of those, which would give me 2 over 1. And there was one negative sign, it's a negative 2 over 1 or a negative 2. Okay, over here, had I set it up the opposite way, same symbol sum, so negative 20. 19 minus 9 would give me 10. See how I still got the same thing? It's just that I had the negative in front of the 20. It doesn't matter. When I reduce it down, I'm still going to have 2 over 1, and there was one negative sign. It's still going to be negative 2 over 1 or negative 2. Okay, it's just making sure that you set it up correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and write out a set of coordinates here, and I want you to try this one on your own. So my set of coordinates, and I'm going to write them out. The first time I'll give you the X, Y, and the second time I won't. So for my first set, let's do 9, 4. And my second set, let's do 5, 2. Okay, so alphabet, X, Y, Z, X, Y. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and set this one up and see what your slope is that you end up with. So you can pause the video to work through this. You should have ended up with a slope of 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more set. This time I'm not going to label the X, Y, so you need to try and remember alphabet X, Y, Z, so it's X, Y. So let's do So go ahead and work through this one and see what your final slope is. You should have ended up with negative 3/7. So key thing on this, when you're working with coordinate sets, make sure that you understand which is X and which is Y. Make sure that you include this negative sign, because that's oftentimes when they give you a negative coordinate, what's left off. And then make sure that you go in the same order. If you choose to start with this Y, then when you're writing out your equation, you have to start with this x. So good luck with this one and just keep plugging away at it.